Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to do a review of Canon 70 to 300 millimeter f4 to 5.6 LIS USM lens. Over the years, this has been one of the lenses that I have been most requested to do, simply because those that follow my work know that I use it a lot and have some questions about it. And it certainly has been one of my favorite lenses. But let's backtrack for a moment to when it was introduced. And at that point, it raised a lot of eyebrows. Canon was introducing a variable aperture f4 to 5.6 lens and a very common, not exotic focal length of 70 to 300 millimeters, and talking about charging a good $1,500+ for it. And people wondered, how could a variable aperture lens that's only 70 to 300 millimeter lens or millimeters be worth it? But then the lens itself came out, and we discovered that it was a true L series grade built lens, and also one that had a whole lot going for it in the optical department. Now, I've chosen to bring the lens out in a sling bag like this because this is a common bag that I will use when I'm traveling light. One of the reasons why I really love that particular 70 to 300 L series lens is the fact that even mounted on a camera body, it's easy to fit into a bag like this and to carry around. I've got room even for another good size lens. I often carry a 24 to 70, like this Tamron 24 to 70 VC, along with this lens as a travel kit, and still have plenty of room and other pouches for other gear to bring along. That makes it a really versatile lens, and in fact, the lens itself, one big advantage is it will stand upright in most camera bags, unlike the larger 70 to 200 zoom lenses that need to be laid flat. And so it certainly is a great handy lens for travel. Now, as you can see, it is reasonably compact. It's a fairly stubby lens. It has a different look design really from any of other Canon zooms, although in some ways the new 100 to 400 millimeter L series Mark II lens is a little bit more like this design overall. It has a great robust build quality. It is definitely an L series lens. It's primarily metal construction here. It's very sturdy. I've carried it to multiple continents. I have carried it to countries from the Middle East and used it in desert environments. I've used it in Canada here in our harsh winters and in very extreme cold conditions. I've taken it all over the place and it still looks brand new. I mean, it is held up amazingly well. But as we take a little bit closer look at the build itself, you'll find that it is, while it's a compact lens, it is a reasonably heavy lens. It's not all that long. It's about 5.6 inches long. But it weighs in at over 1,000 grams, and so it's a dense lens. However, of course, it still weighs quite a bit less, about 400 grams less or so than most 70 to 200 f2.8 zoom lenses. And so unlike those, however, it is not internally focusing. And so when you zoom out towards the extreme of 300 millimeters, the barrel will extend out about 4 inches out further at maximum zoom. It does have a zoom lock on the side. That lock only works, however, at 70 millimeters. It won't lock as some of the other lenses, like the new 100 to 400 millimeter. It won't lock at other positions. It will only lock at the 70 millimeter position. That being said, under natural conditions, the lens is not overly prone to creeping on its own. I showed you in a review just a couple of months ago of the new Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter sport lens that immediately when you turn it upside down like that, immediately would drop down. Difference being, of course, is that had a huge, heavy front element, 105 millimeter front filter thread on it. This is a very modest 67 millimeter front filter thread. And so filters for it are inexpensive and shared with a lot of other lenses. So that's definitely an advantage for it as well. It does come with a nicely built lens hood. I was really happy when I got this lens hood as opposed to, say, a 70 to 200 millimeter f4 or an f4 IS lens. Because those lens hoods, on a lot of lens hoods from that era, they marked really, really easily. This lens hood has a lightly flocked finish on it on the outside, and so it resists marking much better. Also inside, of course, it's got kind of the velvety flocking material that prevents stray light from bouncing around. Nothing particularly special there, but it is a nice lens hood, and it reverses easily and for a nice compact finish. This lens zooms very smoothly, although it externally zooms, it zooms very, very easily and smoothly. But beyond that, there are 3 switches, just the autofocus, manual focus switch. There's also an on and off for the stabilizer, and this has a very effective stabilizer, around close to 4 stops in the field of use, and certainly very useful in that regard. And then the final switch is for the stabilizer mode, and that's between modes 1 and 2. Mode 2 is for if you're wanting to do panning, and it turns off part of the stabilization, and so you can get a smooth panning effect when you use the lens. One of its downsides is that it doesn't work with any of Canon's extenders, either a 1.4x or a 2x. It has a fairly shallow rear element, and so there's not room with those extenders. You can use one of them if you have it zoomed pretty close to 300 millimeters, but it will only focus on a few bodies because of the variable aperture. On top of that, you always run the risk that if you just inadvertently zoom that back in, you could actually damage the rear element of the lens, so it's not worth it. On the plus side, you can use a Canon 1.4x it's much smaller, and the lens elements, the extender elements, protrude less, and so as a result, you're able to use that without any kind of issue. But I prefer to use this lens in its bare form, as that when you use that extender, even with a 1.4x, you're looking at an f8 minimum aperture, maximum aperture on the long end. The autofocus in the bare form, however, is great. It's snappy, it's quick, it's accurate. I find the accuracy on this lens to be exceptionally good, which is another one of the reasons why I like it so much. I almost always, when I zoom into lenses or images that I've taken with this lens, I'm always impressed with how crisp and high the resolution is. And that's one of the reasons why this lens was well received after it came to the market, is that the image quality is fantastic. All the way throughout the focal length, from 70 to 300 millimeters, and even on that long end, the image quality is excellent, and that helps to absorb some of the hit from it being variable aperture, and that it's very perfectly usable wide open at all focal lengths, and I almost always shoot it just like that. And so it's great in that regard. Also, because it has such high resolution, I find that the images on a full frame body, they crop really well, and so you're able to crop a fair portion of the image while it still holds up with a very credible end result. And so it's great in that regard, and it helps to make up for the fact that 300 millimeters in a lot of situations on a full frame body is not particularly long. If you want to use it on a crop sensor, I just brought it out for that purpose to show you. This is mounted on a Canon 70D, but on a 7D or 7D Mark II, 70D. It's a great kind of match to those weight-wise. It balances well. Also, it's really nice in the fact that you get that extra, reach, and I won't get into the crop versus full frame debate here, but it's still let's just say it's still a very nice focal length even on a crop sensor camera, and is lightning quick, and it's autofocus and produces really nice results. Now, one nice thing about this lens is it has a very useful minimum focus distance that's under 4 feet, and as a result, you're able to get very close to things and produce some really beautifully nice images that have nice magnification, but with a great working distance. In fact, some of the images that I've shared, people refer to them as a macro, which kind of cracks me up because it's a 300 millimeter focal length. I recently shot a series of swallowtail butterflies that I'll share here that people exclaimed over in that way, but I was taking it at the 300 millimeter focal length. One nice thing about that is that it resolves really well towards that minimum focus distance and that maximum focal length. One thing that you should be aware of, however, is that the maximum magnification is actually only 0.21 times, and that shows you that there is a phenomena called focus breathing that is taking effect, where at that minimum focus distance, the lens isn't really at its stated focal length, and that's due to floating elements. The plus side is it enables great crispness at a minimum focus distance. The other thing that's nice about this is that it came with 8 circular bladed aperture, and so as a result you can stop it down and circular highlights remain circular. But even beyond that, the bokeh rendering is surprisingly awesome from this lens, and I've been impressed again and again by the images that it produces that are bokeh-licious, and which is surprising with a variable aperture lens like this. But much like the new 100 to 400 millimeter lens, it's the quality of the optics that makes it so appealing in that regard when it comes to its bokeh rendering. In fact, I've even used this lens in a pinch to shoot a wedding or two when I didn't have my normal gear with me, and I got stunning results that I'm very proud of, very happy to share. And it shows the versatility of this lens. It's also a great landscape lens, particularly throughout the first 2/3 of its focal length. Those are all still very, very useful on a full frame for shooting landscape images, and I've used it a lot as a travel lens in that regard to get that extra bit of compression, and I'm really proud of some of the landscape images that I've taken with this lens that number amongst my favorites. And so there's a reason why it's constantly on my rotation for a travel lens, because of its size and versatility. And if you're going on safari or some kind of photography trip where, you know, space is at a premium, this is a great choice for that. I like it on full frame, I like it on a crop sensor, I like the lens, period. I've used it a lot, and while it's not cheap, the price has drifted down to, right now it's $1,349 at B&H Photo, and I think that, yes, it's a variable aperture zoom lens, but don't forget, this is a pro-grade lens in every detail. From its build quality, it has a great robust construction, including flooring coatings on the front element to resist dust, to resist water and fingerprints. And so, as I've said, it is held up. I've used this lens now extensively for 3 or 4 years, and it has held up beautifully well during that period of time. And it's also got pro-grade optics. It does not hang its head amongst any of Canon's lenses. It really has great optical performance. I'm very happy to own one myself, and I really have very few negative things to say about this lens. The only thing that really I would say is that the new 100 to 400 millimeter lens is a very appealing option as well. But if you're looking more for travel purposes, I highly recommend this lens. It will be one that you will find extremely useful and bring you home images that you are very proud of. I'm Dustin Abbott. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.